In this video, I will show you how to rekey an entry door lock with a kit I purchased from Menards. Before purchasing a kit, you need to determine what type of lock set you have. If you have the original keys, the name of the lock will be printed or stamped on the top of the key. If you have a combination lock set and deadbolt, the name will be stamped on the deadbolt. If you have both brands of locks like I do, you'll have to purchase both kits. I'm going to start with the Schlage kit and rekey my deadbolt first. To remove the key core from the deadbolt, I remove the Phillips screw holding the core. The next step is to remove the tailpiece. With the tool provided, push down on the pin to remove the tailpiece retaining nut. It gets a little tricky trying to hold the cylinder, push down on the pin, and remove the retaining nut at the same time. Then I remove the pin and place it on the side. There is a spring behind the pin. It may or may not come out. Just keep track of it so you don't lose it. With the retaining nut removed, insert the existing key and turn it to the left about a quarter of a turn. Take the core tool that came with the kit and place it on the back side of the core. Push on the core with the tool to remove it from the cylinder. It is very important not to let the core come out without the core tool in place. If you remove the core without the core tool, the springs and pins will fall out of the cylinder. If this does happen, don't worry. It's just a few extra steps in putting it back. I'll show you how to install the pins and springs in a future video. Once you remove the core from the cylinder, you can discard the existing key and the existing pins. When you open the directions, you'll see the new pins are color-coded, and they tell you which order to install them. Insert the new key into the core and start installing according to the directions. When installing the pins, make sure the pointy end goes in first towards the key. The directions will tell you what color pin goes into what number of hole. Tweezers or needle nose pliers will come in handy when installing the pins. When all the pins are installed correctly, they will all be flush with the top of the core. If you run your finger across the top of the core, you can feel none of the pins are sticking up. Now I'm ready to install the core back into the cylinder. I hold the core firmly against the coring tool. While holding the core and the tool together, I slide the cylinder back over the core. Now I carefully remove the key from the core, being careful not to pull the core out of the cylinder. Earlier I said the retaining spring may or may not come out with the pin. Mine did finally come out, and now I'll reinstall it. Next I'll set the tailpiece. You'll notice the tailpiece has a slot cut into it. The slot is where it goes around the pin. Now I reinstall the retaining nut. It gets a little tricky trying to hold everything with one hand and push the pin in with the other. Make sure you don't over tighten the retaining nut. If you make it too tight, the key will be bound up when you try and use it. Once I have it back together, I make sure it operates freely. I tightened it just a little bit too tight, so I'm going to back it off one notch. Now it operates smoothly. Now I can reinstall the cylinder back into the lock. Now it's rekeyed and I can install it back on the door. I did the deadbolt first, now I'm going to do the doorknob. This is still a Schlage lock. Take the existing key and insert it into the lock and turn it 1/4 of a turn. Now you can take the pin tool that comes with the kit and push the retaining pin to release the knob. This will only work by turning the key 1/4 of a turn. Before you remove the knob completely, turn the key back and remove it, otherwise you may have a difficult time holding on to the cylinder, as I did here. If you have to, just put the knob back on partially to remove the key. You may have to get a hold of the cylinder with a pair of needle nose pliers. Now the cylinder on the door handle itself does not have a tailpiece, but a snap ring that holds the core in place. Use the tool supplied with the kit to pop the snap ring. Insert your existing key into the core. Put the key back in. I'm going to take this. Now you will use the slotted end of the core removing tool. Okay. Now, keeping pressure on the core tool to the core, slide the cylinder over the core tool. Now you can change the pins. Now, using the same instructions used for the deadbolt, insert a new key and insert the new pins. Remember, if you've done this correctly, the pin should line up and be flush with the core. Here I installed the old key, and you can see the pins don't line up at all. Need the new key. They're Now place the core back on the slotted end of the tool and slide the cylinder over the core.
Slide these back over. Okay.
Now reinstall the snap ring. To install the cylinder back into the knob, push down on the spring retaining clip and slide it into the hole. To get the knob back onto the lock, you need to make sure this area here lines up with this slot on the lock.
Slide the new key in.
Install the new key and turn it a quarter to half turn in order to push the knob back onto the lock. Make sure the key operates properly and you've just changed your locks without spending a fortune. Make sure you like and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.